We're working on the GRE issue essay. My name is Laura Aitchison and I'm a test prep expert. I've helped over 4,000 students since 2009. I'm really excited to be working on this essay with you. For our 5-step method, one of the most surprising things is the timing for the method. So your first step is to actually figure out what's going on in either the issue or the argument. In particular, we're looking at the issue today. Then you're going to select the points that you will make, and the only way to really figure that out is to figure out what points would go with each side of the argument, and then you can figure out which one's more compelling. And then you're going to organize using the template that we're going to suggest. These 3 steps before you ever start typing. That's going to take you about 8 minutes of the 30 total minutes you have for this essay. You have an argument essay, which is also 30 minutes, this issue essay, and the argument essay. Each of them require 8 minutes of preparation before you get to the typing stage. You do not want to start typing before you're ready. And one of the things you can do for yourself is to practice ahead of time so you can really see where that time goes, where it's used really wisely. And of course, it's a recommendation. So we recommend 8 minutes for the first 3 steps, and you may tweak it a little bit to fit whatever your personal style is. But in general, students are very surprised when they realize how much time it takes to organize to really get a good score. Proofreading should only take you about 2 minutes. You don't want to devote any more time to that because then you're going to wind up taking time away from other parts that are even more essential. So for proofreading, you're just looking for major misspellings. Anything like missing punctuation is going to be really big, and grammatical errors that are really going to stand out. You do not have to submit a perfect essay. And actually, we're going to show you an example of a 6 out of 6 essay, and you'll see that the essay is not 100% perfect, but we're going to show you the elements that the graders look for and why that essay in particular, this student's essay, happens to be a 6 out of 6. Colleges are looking for you to earn at least a 4 in this section, but that 6 can really wow them. The prompt that we're looking at is one of 3 different types of prompts. This one in particular, it's a recommendation, and then you have to either agree or disagree with it. And then you have to provide for all of them. You always have to provide evidence or examples. And then in terms of this essay in particular, you're looking for a hypothetical set of circumstances. So there are different parts in this sample essay that will show you in which that comes into play. So the recommendation in general is people who work in the arts and humanities should earn less than those who work in the sciences and economics, because the benefit of the arts and humanities to the population is less important than that of scientific or economic endeavors. That is a sweeping statement. That is something that would be very easy to disagree with, and the student sample we have today actually agrees with that. The student says that people should earn less if they work in the arts and humanities. That's a really difficult argument to make. But there's no right answer. For these types of essays, you can argue either side. The big thing to remember is you don't want to argue both sides. That's not what they're looking for. One side or the other, they can disagree with you personally, but they're still going to grade you upon your essay writing merits. So before we can decide which side to take, and again, the student whose essay we're going to look at, that student decided to agree with the prompt. So on the left-hand side, we have items of agreement. So if arts and humanities workers make less, then that could be a benefit to the population. The standard of living could increase for the entire population. Possibly it would encourage people to enter those fields. That does make money. That does make sense. If people want to make money, then they might want to enter those fields. So in this situation, anytime you're trying to prove something or support an idea, this is a great example of how providing support in terms of hypothetical or historical precedents can be really, really helpful. And in the sample essay, we have evidence. You don't have to cite the evidence, but we have specific evidence, historical examples that make sense, and even a current events example in the essay. And that really bolsters an essay. You can argue with someone, but it's really hard to take their entire argument apart if they have really relevant specific info. And then finally, the final point for arts and humanities is if you pay arts and humanities workers less, this wouldn't eliminate art and humanities because people would still be drawn to those fields because they personally love it. And individuals could still pay for art, meaning if you wanted to buy a painting or if you wanted to pay a musician, people could still do that. So the argument here is it would be better for the economy and for society overall, and we wouldn't be extinguishing those two fields, arts and humanities. Now, the other side is much easier to argue, and many students prefer to do that. You don't have to choose the side that you personally agree with, just choose the side that's easier for you to argue. So the possibility here is that it will be super unfair. You can't just go around saying, oh, you get paid less, and you get paid more. It just doesn't work out so well. So you may find that it's a lot easier to argue against the recommendation. So one of the basic problems is who in the world is in charge of the value? Who gets to say what's more valuable? How would you regulate it? How would you assess it? So there's a lot of issues within that. Now, the danger in arguing against it is that you might be too hypothetical. You really want to come in with super strong support as you take apart this recommendation. So when you are looking at the other bullet points underneath why they should not earn less, just keep in mind how well you can demonstrate that with your own ideas and your own examples. And the basic tenets of that argument on the right-hand side is just that it seems very unfair. Who's going to be in charge of it? What is this value? How are we going to make this work? So if you are arguing for the recommendation, you have to address that. Either side, if you want as many points as possible, either side has to acknowledge that there are going to be disagreements within this issue. You have to say, yes, I get it, somebody might disagree, and you have to acknowledge that and then refute those concerns that other people will have, and that's where you're going to see big points in this essay. So the question is, where do you put that in? Do you just come out fighting in the first paragraph? Well, I know people will disagree with me, but this is what I'm going to say. Well, that's one way to do it, but how about a tried and true method? Let's go with a recommended essay template. The first paragraph, your omission, should you choose to accept it, in your first paragraph is to paraphrase the issue. It seems like the graders should already know what the issue is, but they don't know if you know. You have to come out with a really good statement of what is going on. They can't read your mind. If you want to explain what the issue is about, here's where to do it. And everyone should want to explain it. You want to demonstrate that you totally understand what's happening and what the issue is. Then, once you've actually said what's going on, state your position. Come right out and say it. They can't read your mind, as I said before, and they can't just imagine that you know what your position is. You have to be really clear. So for those of you who want to use really sophisticated wording, that's totally fine. Just don't forget to actually state what your thesis is. And then you want to summarize the goal of your essay according to whatever instructions they provided you. There are 3 different types of instructions. This one in particular has to do with the recommendation. For paragraph 2, you want to choose your strongest point in support of your position within the scope of the specific instructions. So you might have a great idea, but if it's not within the scope of the essay, you don't want to include it. You always want it to be specific to the instructions provided. Then for paragraph 3, pick another point, explain that one thoroughly. And then here's one paragraph that you may not include, and in the sample essay we have, the student decided not to put in that paragraph. If you have an additional point and you do want to add in that paragraph, that's totally fine. What some students do instead is they actually skip down to the next to last paragraph, write that one, and then the conclusion, and then go back to that 4th paragraph if they have time. And we really like that option because that way, just in case you realize that you have only a few minutes left, you can easily erase part of that extra paragraph you were adding in and have a beautiful, completely finished essay. Whereas if you try to put in that extra paragraph and then you realize you've got 2 minutes left and you don't have a conclusion, that's much harder to fix. So make sure that you use your time really wisely. And another thing too is we have another time valve in which you can combine the next to last paragraph with the conclusion. You can do that. You could do that every single time if you wanted to, and you'll still be able to get a 4. If you're going for a 6 though, you really do want to go for 5 paragraphs. A 4-paragraph essay can be really strong, and we're not saying that you can't get a 6, but you are going to have trouble getting a 6 with just those 4 paragraphs. 5 paragraphs are that much more compelling, so keep that in mind.